Well, here we are ready for another year for the Billy Slater Podcast. Season 2025 is upon us. Hello, Billy.
It's good to be back, Salty, and welcome aboard, mate. Officially full-time in the starting team this year. So looking forward to diving into all the nitty-gritty things about the NRL, what happens week to week and all the big talking points. So, yeah, welcome aboard, mate.
Thank you, mate. Looking forward to chatting with you each and every Monday about all things rugby league and whatever else pops up. Just want to ask straight up, mate, how was summer?
Summer was good. Yeah, it's a long summer when you don't have to do a pre-season. So jumped into the spring carnival, a little bit of horseback interviewing at the Melbourne Cup Carnival. So that was fantastic. Really enjoyed that. Seems like a year ago now, but looking forward to getting some footy back on our televisions. It's been way too long. And like I said, when you're playing, from season to season goes really quick because you're training and you're looking forward to the games and all that sort of stuff. But when you're not playing, 5 months is a long time without any footy. So we're not far away, only a few days before we get over to Vegas, and I'm sure we'll dive into those games shortly.
Yeah, we certainly will. We'll get on to Vegas. We'll talk about what we've seen, the pre-season challenge. Also, there's been a lot of player movement, not just the high-profile players, but we've seen throughout the course of the pre-season challenge different names pop up at new clubs as well. So there's certainly plenty to discuss. Let's get into Vegas. Teams are over there well and truly now into their preparation. We saw the shots over the weekend of Canberra in the pool, their recovery, and Ricky Stewart. He's like a kid in a candy shop. It's his first ever visit to Vegas, so he's enjoying it. But it's exciting, isn't it? It was a success last year, and it looks like it's going to another level this year.
Yeah, I think the excitement is just as interesting over here in Australia that it will be over there in the States. And yeah, Canberra's a little bit different to Vegas, you would imagine. But yeah, I think for the players as well, it's not only is it an exciting venture to go over there and perform for our game, it's round one. And everyone is watching those first couple of games of round one. It's the week earlier than the round one here in Australia, just so those players can get back and get on the time zone before they get into round two. So everyone will be watching these four teams, and that's not lost on the players. The players really understand that, and they've got to set the standard for the year.
Well, let's talk about the two NRL games that we've got over there with the Warriors up against Canberra in the first of the two. Big game for both clubs. As you say, Billy, it is round one, and we're looking forward to seeing how everyone's going to go. The Warriors, disappointing season last year. Big change to their lineup. So, of course, James Fisher-Harris heading there. And Canberra lost a lot of experience in the off-season, so Ricky will be relying on a group of highly talented youngsters to get Canberra through the 2025 season.
Yeah, the big signing of James Fisher-Harris to the Warriors, I think that will be that'll be a real standard lift for the club. He's not only one of the best front rowers in the game. He comes from a team that's won the last four premierships, a club that's really set the standard over the last decade, or half decade anyway, in the NRL. So he's going to raise the standard of that football club. No Shaun Johnson. That's the big one for the Warriors. The Warriors have really elevated themselves on the back of Shaun Johnson over the last couple of years, and now it's time for the rest of the team to really take that next step. And I think they'll get a lot of traction over there in the States. Obviously, a lot of Pacific Islanders that live over in America, and the Up the Waz movement has certainly taken the Warriors to another level with their profile. So I thought they were quite impressive with their trials, and if they can play their best football, I think they'll get over the Raiders.
As far as the next game is concerned, who would have thought, Billy, that we're going to be watching a team that's starting a campaign to go for 5 premierships in a row, the Penrith Panthers, and we saw their kids play against Manly on Friday night, and they had a win. So if that's any indication that there's not going to be any drop-off from Penrith, and they take on a side that is really going to look for big things, you'd think, in 2025 in the Sharks.
Well, we could be watching 2 top 4 teams here. I really feel that the Sharks can can go to that next level with Adam Fanua-Blake, the addition of the front rower. Talking about some of the best front rowers in the game. Well, he is the best front rower in the game, if not in the top 2 or 3. So I think he's gonna help the Sharks this year, and the Panthers. Well, you can't write the Panthers off. Losing player after player over the last few seasons, and they just keep producing. They've got such a great structure, and they've still got some of the best players in the game. In particular, their halfback and fullback. I think a lot revolves around them. You throw their lock forward in there as well, and they'll be thereabouts again because they know what works for them, and they're the best in the competition at it.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see this game. I think it's, when you looked at the draw, regardless of where these games are going to be played, you just knew that, hey, this is a good clash. And the fact that it's going to be packed house in Vegas, the eyes of the whole rugby league world watching, it's a mouth-watering round 1 matchup, isn't it?
Well, we talk about all the players that the Panthers have lost. I just want to talk about 2 players that they've gained. Isaiah Papali'i is a back rower. We've got great punch on the edge. He's a really powerful ball runner, and they pick him up. Also, the young kid Blaize Talagi from Parramatta. I think he's a young superstar on the rise, and for the Panthers to pick someone up like Blaize Talagi, whether he plays in the outside backs or they throw him the number 6 jersey, we'll have to wait and see when the teams come out tomorrow. But I think he's going to really benefit from playing outside, not just Nathan Cleary, but playing in a system like the Panthers. I think he's going to be one player to watch out for over the next couple of years.
Okay, so that's the footy side in Vegas. Of course, we've got the Gillaroos against England as well, which will be great. We've got Warrington and Wigan. Will we have the US president at the game, Billy? Do you think you mix with royalty these days, like you do at the Magic Millions and the like? Have you got a line to the White House at all?
Well, Phil Gould doesn't go over there for a holiday. He's going over there for a reason. So I can just picture Donald Trump and Gus sitting in the grandstand. Gus it's his personal commentator sitting right next to him, just explaining the rules, and you can just see Gus sitting there next to Trumpy going, no. But wouldn't that be something?
Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Let's see. He can weave his magic, Peter V'landys, and Gus might be his trump card to get Trump along to...
Go get it. Trump card.
That's it. I'll tell you what might be keeping Trump away from Vegas. He probably doesn't want to be in the same city as one Jonathan Thurston.
Ooh, maybe. Or maybe he does.
JT's very excited. I know that.
Is he over there yet, John? Or is he a late arrival?
Mentally, he's over there. I think he arrives in the next day or 2. He's been over there, though, for the last month, I think, in preparing for what's to come in Vegas. But, yeah, it's going to be a great week for those heading over to Vegas. Billy, back to rugby league and South Sydney Rabbitohs. Their 2025 campaign was turned on its head late last week with the unfortunate injury, particularly to Cam Murray with the ruptured Achilles, this troublesome hamstring as well that's going to keep Latrell Mitchell out for a couple of months. Not what Wayne Bennett wanted, was it, right on the eve of the season?
Yeah, and not what the players wanted either. They've just been working so hard over the last couple of months to get themselves fit for the season, and in particular Cam Murray. We all know how hard he works on the field, and I'm sure that would be replicated in his training off the field. And it was a disappointing year last year for the Rabbitohs, and Cam Murray being their captain, he would have been leading the way, setting the standards through the summer, and for him to rupture his Achilles, that would nearly certainly be his year. If there's anything to salvage from the year, it might be the back end of it, but that's a heartbreaking blow for Cam himself, but also for the Rabbitohs. And then you've got Latrell Mitchell, who just seems to really struggle to stay on the field for long periods of time. We have these athletes in our game. Tom Trbojevic is another one that the game is so demanding, the training is so demanding that it's really hard for these elite athletes to stay on the field for long periods of time. And, Latrell's one of them. He's such a key player for that organisation and makes that footy club so much better. So I'm sure Wayne Bennett. I don't think one thing Wayne Bennett won't be doing is he won't be panicking. No. There hasn't even been a ball kicked, in this Premiership season yet, and one thing that Wayne Bennett won't be doing is panicking. He'll be building his squad using the players that he has and developing those players. So when you do get the class of Latrell Mitchell back, well, the footy team's more established and you built that foundation of your game. So, but the loss of some key personnel over the last couple of years, Damien Cook this year, the depth is a little bit thinner. So, when you do get these high-profile injuries and your big talent injuries, it really hits you hard.
Yeah, that's for sure. As far as Souths with Wayne this year, and it's a hard one to answer now probably for you, Billy, because of what's happened in the last week or so. But what were your expectations of what Wayne would be able to do with this South Sydney squad and the tools that he's got at his disposal?
Well, I think first and foremost, he would create a happy environment. He would create a happy and an enjoyable environment for them to go to work and that gets the best out of the players. You think of Cody Walker, Latrell Mitchell, Alex Johnston, all these stars of our game. They haven't seemed overly happy playing their footy at South over the last couple of years. So, I think Wayne, he puts them in a good frame of mind to get the best out of themselves. That's the first thing. And then there's the footy that comes off the back of that. And obviously the injuries, turn your mind to, it's going to be a tough year for the Rabbitohs. But, you'd expect Latrell to only miss maybe the first month, 6 weeks of the season. If they can build off that, Jai Gray's a wonderful replacement for him. And, I think he's going to do a great job. He's got different strengths to Latrell Mitchell, but he's going to get back, in the near future, Latrell, and they've still got a lot of class there. No Damien Cook this year, and Peter Momazelis will take that number 9 position, and that's a question mark how he handles that workload through the middle of the field, and it's not an easy job playing in the number 9 jersey. It's not just all attack. The majority of your focus needs to go into your defence as well. And, to withstand that workload, that's another question mark for the Rabbitohs.
All right. Well, you made mention there of a couple of players who have departed, who have arrived at South. And it's a case, I know it happens every year, but right across the board. Let's talk in general terms now about some of the change in personnel for a lot of clubs. There's a lot of experienced players, Billy, when you have a look around. You just got to look at the Dragons with Damien Cook, Val Holmes, Clint Gutherson heading to the Dragons. We've got some bright young stars that have changed clubs. I look at a move like Kulakefu Fune-Fuiaki from the Cowboys to the Dolphins. There's been a large amount of player movement for the 2025 season, and not just the high-profile players either, as we've seen with someone like Agemet Shibasaki, for instance, who's he's lobbed at the Broncos and is in line for a spot in round 1.
Well, it's the salary cap doing its work, isn't it? Doing its thing, and it's evening the competition out. And you look at the Tigers. I think the Tigers are a really interesting club, going into this 2025 season. Jerome Luai, Sunia Taruva, they've picked up some wonderful experienced players and highly influential players. Ben Hunt going to the Broncos, that's a highly influential player going to a club that missed the finals last year. So you'd expect these influential players and experienced players to really have an impact. The Dragons are an interesting one. That they've got so much experience that have just come into their footy team. Damien Cook, which we've just spoken about, Clint Gutherson and Valentine Holmes, they're world-class players. I think Clint Gutherson is going to be an influential player in that footy club. He's such a good communicator, and he's a real leader. He leads with his actions, and they've been quite impressive over the preseason games. So there are a number of ones that sort of spring to mind. Stefano Utuikamanu down at Melbourne. Melbourne only just missed out on the Premiership by a fraction, and then they pick up a class front rower like Stefano. So they're going to take some holding as well.
There's only a couple of other players too, though I know they're still at their same clubs, but are almost like new recruits. Tom Gilbert at the Dolphins and Tino Fasul-Malaawi at the Titans as well. We saw them make a comeback during the pre-season challenge.
Yeah, good to see those two boys back on the field. Tommy Gilbert over the last couple of years, he's had season-ending injuries the last 2 years, so good to see him back on the field. And boy, hasn't Tino had some sort of a preparation for this season, and he looked really impressive in that first half on the weekend. His first hit out since his knee injury, missed all of last year, and I thought he was really impressive. So good to see Big Tino back.
That was one of the highlights, wasn't it? Seeing those players return from injury during the pre-season challenge. Brisbane winning the pre-season challenge, but it's all about, Billy, I suppose, looking at the new combinations, etc., seeing... the coaches also use these games to look at the back end of their roster as well, not just their top line players, but some of the kids, how they're developing and those fringe players?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's a great opportunity for young, more inexperienced players to press their claim and show their coach what they can do, and not only show the coach what they can do, but build some trust with the coach, because at the end of the day, the coach, they pick the team on trust, and when they get an opportunity to go out there and perform perform the actions that the team sees as important, that's where you build trust within your from player to coach. And some of the young guys that have got the opportunity over the last couple of weeks, that's in the memory bank of those coaches, and when they're needed, they'll have no hesitation on throwing those young guys in because they trust them a lot more. So, there's great opportunity, and it's also a good opportunity for the whole team to start building and to start practicing what they've been working on throughout the whole preseason. Simplicity is the key at the start of the season. High completion rates, making sure your defense is in order. It's such a long season, Salty, and you've got time to work on your attack. But at the start of the year, what's successful is the simple things of the game.
Yeah, interesting you say that when you look at who might be coming into different teams for round one. And say looking at Brisbane, for instance, where Jack Gajewski looks like he's going to edge out Brendan Piakura. Now, would that be along what you're saying there, more a defensive decision made by Michael Maguire?
Yeah, potentially. It might be a reward for a big off season as well. Coaches like rewarding players for working hard, and Jack's obviously done that at the Broncos. By all reports, it's been a really tough preseason up there, which they all are. They're all tough, and you can see with the Broncos, simplicity is certainly a focus. They've got so much firepower, the Broncos, but they're not using it as much as they have done in the past. The big stat for the Broncos for me is the defense, and that's obviously where Michael Maguire has put his focus into is the defense. And in the two trials, and I know there's a lot of players that change positions and they utilize a lot more players. In the two trials, there's only been 35 missed tackles this year. Now, if you marry that up to last year's final game against the Melbourne Storm in round 27, there was 45 missed tackles from the Broncos in their last game. So they've got less missed tackles over 2 games this season than they had over their final game last year. So you can see a real shift in the mindset of the Brisbane Broncos, where they're gonna get down and dirty, and they're looking at getting into the trenches this year. Their firepower and their class will always rise to the top, and that'll always be there. But they're building a foundation of their game, and it looks like it's coming through their defence.
The Billy Slater Podcast, and Billy, it's time now for your predictions. Now, if any of them come through and you're correct, obviously we'll replay them, and rest assured they'll be tossed away by everyone if you're wrong, okay? So don't worry, we won't bring them out.
Thrown in the bin.
Yeah, exactly. Do we want to go straight into it? Who's your tip to be premiers for 2025?
Look, I think the Melbourne Storm are in the box seat. Look, you've obviously got the 4-time premiers and the Panthers. They're going to be thereabouts. They're not going to beat themselves, so they're going to be right up there. But I think the Melbourne Storm, you think back to last year, I feel through the majority of the year they were the best team in the competition. They didn't have Cameron Munster for a huge chunk of that season. They didn't have Nelson Asafa-Solomona in the grand final. And then they've picked up Stefano Utoikamanu. So I just think if the Melbourne Storm can stay healthy, I think they've got not just the footy team and the squad. I think they've got a bit of motivation to go on and go one better this year. So they're my top pick, the Melbourne Storm.
Just before say who they're going to play in the grand final, Cameron Munster, and he would no doubt have benefited by having an off season, and he goes into this 2025 season fully fit. He was hampered for a large part of last campaign.
And he looks really fit as well. Spending a bit of time in and around Cameron at the Melbourne Storm, he's in a really good place. He's in a good place on the field, and he's in a good place off the field. And we all know when Cameron's in a good place off the field, he's in a good place. Yeah. So, look, he's had his third child at the back end of last year, and really settled in who he is and how he sees his footy. We all see Cameron Munster as a bit of a larrikin and a bit blasé, but he really cares about his footy, and he's trained really hard in the off season. He's looked after himself, and I think he's in for a really big year. His body is in good shape in terms of his health. Obviously carrying that groin injury into last year, and he's had all that rectified. And he looks like he's in for a wonderful season off the back of that trial against the Cowboys on the weekend. To get Jerome Hughes back into the halfback position just frees him up that little bit, and he's got so much strike power around him. So looking forward to what Cameron Munster can produce this year. Definitely.
All right, if Storm are your pick for premiers, who do they play in the grand final?
I've got a couple here. I think the Panthers are right there. The Panthers, you just know that they're going to be there at the end of the year because they're so consistent. Again, talking about Cameron Munster missing a huge chunk of the year. Nathan Cleary missed a huge chunk of the year as well. Yeah. No Jerome Luai, that's the question mark, but you put Nathan Cleary in that team every week and they're going to be right there. So I think they'll be there. The other team for me is the Broncos. I think the Broncos were really disappointing last year, and I think, talk about motivation, they've got huge motivation to play finals, and I think they've got the footy team to get there as well.
Okay, your prediction for Dally M medalists this year?
I think it's a team that's going to be consistent and that'll finish in the top two, and that'll come from those teams that I've just spoken about. I'm going to go Cameron Munster. I just think that he's in a really good position to go and have a good season. Whether he wins the Dally M or not, there's a lot of class players in the Melbourne Storm, so they'll be taking votes off each other. But I'll throw Cameron Munster out there to have a really high quality season, and that might just get him his first Dally M medal.
Okay. Now, you've alluded to Brisbane in you're expecting bigger things from them this year. Are they your big improvers? Any other sides as well to mention that you expect to improve from what we saw in 2024?
Well, they are an improver, but I think it's an improvement from last year. I don't think it's an improvement from where their standard should be. Mm-hmm. We all know that they were disappointing last year, so I haven't got them as my biggest improver this year. I've got the Parramatta Eels as my biggest improver this year. Would they finish second last year?
Yeah.
Or down? They're close to the last. Second last, I think they finished. And I believe that they can play finals, Parramatta. They've got a great coach. Jason Rolls is a great coach. I've been in and around Jason Rolls for a while. I played alongside him, and he's worked really hard to build his knowledge in and around the coaching sort of domain. He's gone overseas. He's worked in different codes, worked with some great mentors, and he's been at some highly successful clubs in the NRL in terms of the Roosters and the Melbourne Storm. I think he's ready to to jump into the head coaching role, and I think he's got a footy team there to work with. You think about their halves, they've got two of the best halves in the competition in Dylan Brown, Mitchell Moses. I think their young fullback, is it Iongi?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, a young fullback's a great young player coming from a good system over at Penrith as well, and I just think that they're going to be thereabouts. So I've got the Parramatta Eels as my big improvers.
Tell you one player, Billy, we were talking earlier in the podcast about players that have changed clubs. One that hasn't got any headlines, but someone I know plenty of very good judges rate highly, and that's Jack Williams. What a terrific addition he is, the former Shark, into that Eels forward pack.
I actually didn't realise Jack Williams had gone to the Parramatta Eels. With all these big-name signings, it sort of slipped under the radar. I didn't know it until I was watching the trials over the last couple of weeks, and I've got a big rap on Jack Williams. I think he's a wonderful player, and some of these sort of lower-profile players that just sort of slip through the radar every now and again have huge impacts on footy teams, and he's a wonderful player through the middle of the field, and I think he's going to have a big impact for the Parramatta Eels.
Now, we talk about team that'll improve. Which team do you think is under pressure to, say, maintain a finals position? Which team may be on the slide in 2025?
Well, I don't... This is a tough question, Salty, because I'm a glass half full sort of a guy,
Yep.
and I think everyone's... Like, I actually struggled finding the last 4 spots for the top 8. I've got about 9 teams there fitting into the last 2 spots in the top 8. So I think everyone can, and it's up to the players. It's up to that group whether they're going to do it. I think one club that has a real challenge to hold the standard that they got to last year and to even increase it is the Bulldogs. I feel the Bulldogs, and they can do it. I'm not saying that they can't do it. That they've just got a huge challenge. They were the second best defensive team. They were the best defensive team for a long period of time last year, and it was through effort. It's hard to do, and to sustain that, not just for a full season, to sustain that year on year on year. They've set the standard. Their challenge is to hold it now, and they haven't brought in a whole heap of players, so they've got to do it with what they've got there already. So I just feel that it's a real challenge for the Bulldogs to actually get off to a good start and to sustain that standard that they set themselves last year. I've still got them playing finals, but they were in the top 4 for a big chunk of last year, and whether they can get to that again, I hope they can, because they were great to watch. But yeah, I just think that's a real challenge for them.
All right. Now, what about as far as players here that excite you? Who are you most excited to see come 2025? Might be a hard one, just once again, to answer as put it just there in name one, but because there's a lot of exciting players right across the board in our competition.
Yeah, and I just spoke about Ben Hunt going to the Broncos. I think he's an exciting player. But I've got a young guy going to the Panthers, Blaize Talagi. What he did in his rookie year last year at the Parramatta Eels, who was struggling, throughout the big chunk of the year, he was a shining light for them. And I'm sure they would have been disappointed to lose him. But to go to, the best team in the competition with the best structures, and one of the best players to probably play the game, Nathan Cleary, he's going to set him up in space that he hasn't been in space before. And I just think it's a wonderful opportunity for a young star like Blaize Talagi to jump into that system, to jump into that footy team and go and express himself. And I'm really looking forward to him playing. And luckily, we only have to wait, another 6 days, and we get that opportunity. Yeah, we sure do. Looking forward to that one. That game, of course, on 9 this weekend. Penrith and Cronulla from Vegas. Can tell you that it's back again this year, the Billy M Awards. They're back, and a lot of thought goes into them. The best team in the round, and also the best player. Sometimes it's hard because there's so many great players across the course of the weekend, but I try and pick out the most influential player that was in the game and that dictated the result.
Okay, we're also back for another year of the listener questions, and we've already got a few listener questions as well. This one from Liam. Hi, Billy. Welcome back. Do you think this is the year the Tigers finally break their drought and play finals footy?
Well, I absolutely think they can. I think it's up to them, Liam. Obviously, everyone's got the optimistic view of playing finals at this time of the year. I just want to point out their spine. You've got Jareem Buller at fullback. You got Luai and Lockie Galvin, who's got that full year under his belt. He looks a real player that's going to kick on. And then Api Coruscant, who's a premiership winner, multiple premiership winner. That's nearly the best spine in the competition. The one that probably rivals it is the Melbourne Storm, but that's as good as any. Dream Buller played with a shoulder injury last year. I know he's had some other minor surgery with his appendix, I think, over the last couple of months. But playing with a shoulder injury, you're not the player that you can be when you're carrying that injury. And for him to be fully fit, Jerome Luai added to Lockie Galvin, who wouldn't surprise me if they actually swap positions and Lockie Galvin played that halfback role. He's a real on-baller. He likes to be involved. And Luai has probably played his best football just sitting off a little bit, like when he plays with Nathan Cleary.
Yep.
So it wouldn't surprise me if they actually, just transition a little bit. They mightn't swap their numbers on their back, but they might swap the roles of who's more dominant and who's not. I think they can play finals. I think they really can.
Oh, great question, Liam. This one is from Hugh. Which signing do you think will have the biggest impact on their new club?
There's some good ones. There's some real good ones. I'm going to say Ben Hunt. I think Ben Hunt will have the biggest impact on his new club. For the first 9 rounds, he'll play in the halves, we'd imagine, with Ezra Mam being out of the footy team. But it wouldn't surprise me if he played a bit of number 9 towards the back end of the season. Walsh, Reynolds, Mam, and Hunt. Well, we talk about spines. That's as good as you get as well. That's a quality spine if they can get the best out of those 4 players. They've got an engine room there. They've got class out wide. I think Ben Hunt can have a real impact up there in Brisbane.
This one, Billy, is from Caden. Do you think the Sharks' premiership window is closing? Is 2025 their best chance for a while?
Well, the only ones that can close the window are the players and the coaching staff. They're the only ones that can close a window. I certainly can't close any windows sitting here. But look, I think it's as good as opportunity as they've had for a while. Adam Fanua-Blake is probably what they've needed. A real leader through the middle of the field, and they need to get their best out of their halves. Trindle and Hines, if they can get them firing at the right time of the year, they've just been hovering around that, bottom half of the top 4, and this is the year if they're going to go and do it. They've got their big signing in Adam Fanua-Blake, but the window can be open for as long as you want. Living down in Melbourne, there was always a lot of talk around the premiership window in the AFL, and I think it becomes a mindset of the players. And the more you hear about it, the more you talk about it and rebuild and all this sort of stuff, you actually believe it. So if you think you're in a rebuild, well, your year's probably over already.
Yeah, I've got to say, it's a term I don't like in our game, especially. You look at some of our premiers and grand finalists over the last 20 years, Billy, and a lot of them weren't predicted to be there in that final Sunday.
Yeah, come from the clouds. Parramatta a few years back, and then the Broncos, and it's such a mindset game, and you can either be there or you can't, and then that's entirely up to you.
All right. If you want to send through a question, then email us, Billy Slater Podcast at 9 Well, Billy, it's been fun. We're back for another year. The footy is upon us. No more trials or anything like that. It's just game on in Vegas from this weekend. So bring on round one, hey?
Yeah, looking forward to it, Salty. And just a quick question without notice, mate. The two games this weekend, who do you like? The Raiders and the Warriors?
I'm going an upset there. I think the Raiders.
The Raiders.
I think the Raiders. What about yourself?
I'm going to go the Warriors.
Okay.
Yeah, Warriors for me. And the Panthers and the Sharks.
I can't go past Panthers.
Yeah, Penrith for me as well.
Penrith. So
there we go.
We agree there. And I think good luck to the Gillaroos too against England. You'll see that game on 9. And the English Super League game too with Warrington against Wigan. So 4 big games in Vegas this weekend. Good on you, Billy. We'll be back next week.
See you then, mate.